I'm just going to bring the recorder back on. Just
Okay.
chatting about the whole idea of omnis and immersion into states and narcissism and Chod.
Okay. Yes. No. Interesting.
and
Interesting
and
mix.
salvia even, and
Mm.
this idea of like, wouldn't narcissism be the occupation of any form in a way, like in 100%, commitment?
Yes. Yes. But it's also the
I mean, you'd have to be a narcissist of anything to commit.
Sure, but what I'm arguing here is the ability to go into that state, but also the ability to not be bound by that state, so to be able to come out of it when you want to, not to be full Narcissus. He was so intoxicated with his own beauty that almost like he had to be turned into the flower to see the full extent of this. Okay, this is where this goes. This is the full extent of where it's going to lead to. Whereas for example, if he'd been able to step out of it and say, like, okay, well, I'm intoxicated with myself, but I can step out of it now, I can go and do something useful for the world or for myself. But he needed that lesson in order to be reflected back to him to get to the point. And I think this is the lesson for us. It's like, yes, love yourself, absolutely love yourself, go into it, but don't be so self-absorbed that it's all about you. Realize that everything else is an aspect of you and engage the world because if you're so engaged with yourself and your own play of your own mind, then you're not really engaging the world. You're not smelling the roses as you walk down the road. It's like just opening yourself up to the possibility of what is by not being too self-absorbed. I think I mentioned this before, but Chogyam Trungpa said that a lot of the Western ego is quite neurotic and it needs to be reinforced so people have a strong sense of self before they actually begin deconstructing it. But if you start to deconstruct a neurotic ego, it'll almost collapse and fall apart. So, healthy self love, absolutely. I'm for that 100%. Total self absorption, well, if you're totally self-absorbed by what you're bringing to the world and you're bringing something useful and beautiful, then absolutely. But people being absorbed by their own faces, well, I mean, part of the practice of chod, the practice of cutting, is to destroy this image of the self so that you can actually have the thousand faces. So you're not stuck in one particular form. This is the vision of chod, to actually move beyond one form, to acknowledge the fact that you are many things, and it also removes the need to actually have that taken away from one. That you're not going to end up in a motorbike accident with your face scraped off because you've done it. You've spent an hour imagining your face being scraped off and not being attached to that. Then you don't actually have to go out there and do it in reality. So
No,
it's
but it's
actually,
an interesting. I mean, the void in itself is narcissistic. I mean, it's like, I'm all potentials.
yes, I'm all potential, but
I'm all
it's,
great.
yes, yes, no, sure, but that's healthy. But then, as I'm all great, I go out as a Chakravartin, as a world ruler, and I make my world a better place. If I'm enjoying myself, I want to bring my friends along to enjoy what I'm enjoying. If I'm having a good time or if I'm entertaining myself, I'd like to entertain my friends as well, so they can appreciate what I'm bringing to the party. That's the positive benefit of sharing. It's not like, ooh, me, my precious, I'm going to look at my little ring here and I'm self-absorbed and self-obsessed about it, like, ooh, what I can do. No, I'm going to take it out into the world. I'm going to share it. Yeah,
But
it's.
we all self-obsessed in a way, and I know what you're saying. It's definitely, it's part of the journey to break attachments and look at, um, Ramtha calls it, where we read in the rainbow, where you can't see anything else but your own reflection everywhere. So how do you break out of that reflection? How do you smash the mirror or whatever? And that's a little bit like what you're talking about. But I think that
Mm,
if you see something outside of yourself that you find, distasteful or whatever, and you decide to take its head off, like that kind of Kali energy,
mm, mm.
um, sure, that then you can't be attached to the outcome either. You can't,
No, totally, totally.
you, yeah, it's
And in that case, I mean, the outcome was I would potentially lose a friend, and I was willing to take that as a possibility. It was just something in me would not stop myself from doing it. It arose in me, and I mean, I return once again to the phrase, the passions once overcome get worn as adornment. And in that sense, my righteous anger was a passion which I'd overcome, and I was using it as a, I was like letting it out on a string to perform a function. Then I was coming back and I was leaving it. And once I'd done that, the passion disappeared, the anger disappeared, and did its right thing. Then I had to clean up what came after it, but I was willing to take the consequences of that by doing it in the first place. And that's, you know, they say in the left-hand path, which we've discussed a bit, it's like not to be afraid to take potent actions when the time is right, as long as you're willing to deal with the consequences. So it's like,
Absolutely.
if you're willing to deal with it, then don't shy away from doing it, because there's immense benefit in doing it. In fact, if I'd not done it, I probably would have had to internalize that anger, and I might have even gotten sick from that anger. It needed to express, and therefore it came out, and I trusted myself in that moment in the fact that it came out, and it did what it needed to do and sparked up a whole range of stuff, which a lot of which was positive. And now it caused a rift, which I then repaired, and then hopefully coming from a better place and saying to this friend, in this case, like, well, I expect better from you. It's like, well, maybe I have no right to expect better from you, but like, I know what you're capable of, and therefore this is what I'm asking for in our interaction. And he was like, okay, well, fair enough, but he wants to just play, do what he needs to do, and that's fine too. And I mean, everyone, I'm just looking at the perfection of it, and I'm always willing to shine the mirror back at myself. And as I said, I did look at that self-absorption in myself, and I do acknowledge that at times in my life I have been self-absorbed. But the perfection of self-absorption is to see one's brilliance, to see one's genius, and to like reflect it out to the world, to share it. It's like, okay, here's the pattern I'm going to paint today, or this is the movie I'm going to project, or this is the artwork I'm going to form, or this is the process I'm going to facilitate. Whatever that is, that's one's work of art. That is what one's bringing out into the world, and that is a good thing.
Mm. I mean, this, it's just such a fascinating topic because it's like the difference between arrogance with a small a and arrogance with a big A.
Mm, mm,
Kind of like arrogance, and it's almost tied to the small self and the big self kind of thing. It's
mm,
like, well, we have all these layers, I suppose,
mm,
to
mm.
of
Well, I mean,
ourselves. So if you slay, say, the small s self, the small obsessive order, then you're gonna go through a certain, death of sorts. I mean, it might
mm,
not be a big
mm,
deal if you've done a lot of
mm,
work on detaching,
mm,
from
mm,
need for
mm,
approval.
mm. Yeah,
Um, but just, because in with the omnis, you're playing with archetypes, and you're playing with grand archetypes. Playing with the high. I mean, we could call them the gods. The kind of the energy of the gods almost,
totally.
in a
Storming
sense.
heaven. Absolutely. Yeah, totally. Storming heaven.
And so, in the work with these omni frequencies, and the archetypes of the gods kind of thing, you're also, I suppose, working with ego and not, it's like, where does
Well,
the integration come in?
let me answer this question from an interesting but useful perspective. When I looked at making the All Victorious Confidence Remedy, that was the essence of that was to be open to the world, to arrive, knock on the door without fear, open it without fear of consequences, what was going to be behind it, to feel positive, to be open, to be feel fabulous, but also to be open to new environments. I found when I was taking the All Victorious Confidence, which is the mood of the Chakravartin, the world ruler, which they say to everyone, like take up your position as a Chakravartin, as a world ruler. And the mood of the Chakravartin is all victorious confidence. I am the king of my world, and I'm going out and addressing the other fellow kings and queens as I would want to be treated myself. So I'm behaving impeccably because I've got the power, I've got the glory, whatever it might be, and I'm going out in the spirit of openness. They talk about the great eastern sun, that the spirit, the Shambhala spirit of being open to the world, open to receive, but also to give. So one pets the puppy and one saves the old lady as she crosses the road, and yet one still dances like a dervish wildly at the party. One does all of these things without there being any conflict. I mean, when you look at what went into the or Victoria's confidence, the royal jelly is the essence of what turns a normal worker bee into a queen bee. So this was omnified, and the omnification of this, when I was taking the Omni of the Royal Jelly, I almost felt like I was growing physically. I was getting bigger. My field was enlarging. I almost felt like I was getting taller and taller. But it was just that sense of taking the normal growth and actually turning it into something bigger. The light of Jupiter, that went into it as well. That spirit of going out into the world, happy, feasting, partying, eating, drinking, but a positive thing, open, right? The other things, Peacock, a little bit of the show. Peacock went into the All Victorious Confidence mix as well. That like, ooh, I'm showing off my fine colors. Now the peacock is also the symbol of oxygen because it eats poison and turns it into color, showing that there is nothing to be feared from the world. The peacock comes to the poison and eats it, knowing that it'll turn into its beautiful colors. This was part of the ingredients. What else was there? The San Pedro flower essence, which I put in there as well, is like the full expression of the San Pedro. The as it flowered, that moment of capturing that full bloom. It only flowers for a day, and then the flower dies. So that's captured in that. I put in the reishi as well to modify it a little bit because so I didn't sort of burst through the doors when I came through like too much. It just toned it down a little bit because I found a little bit of that, and the reishi did that because the reishi acts as an adaptogen. So if something's too high, it'll bring it down. If it's too low, it'll bring it up. So just to modulate some of these frequencies. So in a sense, this it's the ABC is like the perfection of narcissism. It's like, yes, I love myself, I love the world, I'm feeling fabulous, I'm going out into the world in this open space. It's not like I've just had 2 cups of coffee or like a line of cocaine or something. It's not that. It's like this openness, strong, feeling good, feeling strong, feeling positive, feeling that good things will come your way, that you can do good things, that things will come back to you. And this is what I found when I was taking the ABC. I started talking to people I'd never have talked to before, just casual people on the street, and I learned a whole lot of stuff. Normally I'd be like, I don't want to talk to this one, I'm in my world, and they're in their world, I don't want to interface with their world. But then it was like they were there, they presented in front of me, and I just started engaging, I started talking to them about, it didn't even matter what, just the joy of the interaction. It made me a better person. I mean, I say this in the most open sense because it made me more
You're
open
such
to
a
things.
narcissist.
I'm totally a narcissist, but I'm bringing it to its full perfection. I'm the peacock, with the peacock having a great time in the Garden of Eden, yeah?
It's just such a. I mean, I just find it such a fascinating conversation, and I guess there is so much in the Omni field because it is a
Mm,
high frequency field. So we're
mm,
talking superpowers,
mm,
unified fields,
mm,
superconductor states. You are talking about both
mm,
learning to manage power in a
mm,
sense,
mm, mm.
and of course the journey into that is often a state of narcissism, maybe in different ways. And so,
Sure.
maybe the decapitating of these, narcissistic states or whatever that might not have, they might, like it's my point is that it's okay to be narcissistic in a
Sure.
way, to be absorbed in something
Sure.
until you've fully got that frequency.
I
So
would
if
argue
you
it's necessary.
if you need to be absorbed in something, because sometimes this idea of the narcissistic wounding comes in where people believe that they have to be so self-sacrificial that
Sure.
they can't obsess with anything, they can't
Mm,
attach to anything, and they
mm,
can't absorb
mm,
themselves into
mm,
anything because
mm,
they
mm,
have sacrificed self, and that
mm,
is not.
mm. That's not good either. But what I'm saying, these are both represent extremes. And what I'm talking about is finding something in the middle of that where one benefits people because it's one's pleasure to do it. One enjoys it. One gets pleasure. The whole bodhisattva thing of actually for the benefit of all sentient beings. One's not strip mining, areas of the Karoo to get the gas out of it and trashing the planet, or that one's doing what has right livelihood, one's doing what one loves to do at the same time, and by doing what one loves and having a good time, one is automatically good at it because that's what one wants to do. So it's really the self-sacrifice and the narcissism. I'm not all about self-sacrifice. I've been there, and it's like I've learned the lessons of that as well. It's like at a certain point, you actually have to say, well, what about me? What about the time I need for me? I've got to nourish myself, otherwise I can't nourish anyone. So it kind of presupposes that people have already done that, have arrived at that state, and then are at a point where, like, okay, well, what's next? Now I want to journey out into the world. I've basically got myself kind of figured out. Now, like, I want to go out into the world, and I want to bring certain myself and certain aspects of myself, whether that might be the light of Jupiter or, a certain underwater creature, sea creature, which I have a particular
Mermaid.
affinity to, a mermaid or whatever. Bring me a mermaid or omnifier any day. Just finding them, but that kind of stuff, that's all doable. I mean, the technology of, I'll give you an example. When I was out with Simon and some friends, I was lying in the sea and I was swept by the sea. I just let the sea carry myself, be swept. And like whenever I had resistance, it would nail me. I'd get dumped and I'd get scraped on the sand. But whenever I let go completely into it, I'd be carried. And often it was just a thin layer of water I'd be like drifting on. And as long as I had no resistance, I'd be fine. But the minute I went into like an ego state, I'd be nailed by it. But at the same time, I had to be able to stand up. It was like the dance of Dakini. You have to be able to say, okay, I'm here. I'm counted amongst this. I'm not going to resist you. I'll go with you. But I also have my own will I can express. Now, I said to Simon, like, oh, you must try this. He'd done it a different way. He'd consumed the Eclonia, which is the seaweed that exists between the land and sea, and it puts down roots on the seafloor, but it also moves as the sea current moves. So he consumed that. He dieted this plant in order to get the wisdom technology of that. Different techniques for doing the same thing, for learning a particular lesson. Now, the ways we learn lessons are myriad. I mean, it's very much according to our own nature, and it's more just to have the strengths as we go out there, so that the journey itself becomes more entertaining, more fun. We actually go out and we do this journey of self-discovery in the mood of joy. It's like, yes, we're no longer beasts to be herded through the field and taken to the slaughter or milked or whatever. We're actually sentient beings to be counted on this planet, and we choose our reality based on what we find beautiful and lovely and to be cherished, and we go out in that mood, and we continue our spiritual trip as an exploration, as a dance, as a free form with reality, which we choose. And yeah, whatever it might be, this is all the Omni stuff is all about choices. It's like making choices based on, okay, now we've realized who we are, we've taken up our mantle, and we're like, okay, I'm to be counted here. Now, what do I want to incorporate in my reality and go out and do? Like, what substances do I actually want to have as part of my memory field, my DNA field, my tattoos? What do I want as part of that? What do I want my armor to be made from? Like, what are the colors of the feathers on my crest? What jewelry do I want to have? It's like,
So
what are my
it's a bit
adornments?
like a shape shifting technology. It's another
It
way
is a shape-shifting
it's like another
technology,
way to
yeah,
talk about it. So
totally.
Omni tech for the shape shifting.
For the shapeshifter, for the modern shapeshifter.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to create a range of. I suppose you're saying that there's
No, I am. I'm
everything
starting to
and
create
anything,
a
but it's
range.
like, well,
Anything, yeah.
what do you want to shape shift into, right?
Well, what do you want to shapeshift into? Yeah, it's like, yeah. I
Or
just,
be able to shape shift into anything.
well, this is what I want as well. Yeah, this is the ideal. And I mean, they're finding something that's very mutable to allow it. I mean, it might not be one. Each shape might require a different substance. We might have to learn that shape. For me, the the sea tantra, that like being swept by the sea. After I did that, I went canoeing the next day, and it was quite rough seas, and I had no fear. Normally, I'd have a little bit of fear, unfamiliar. I'm not that familiar with sea canoeing. In fact, I've never done it ever. It was the first time, but I had no fear because I trusted the sea. I'd embraced the sea, so I'd learned the lesson that then I could go out into it without fear. So. I would say each substance represents a potential weave, and the omnification of that weave is taking that substance, imprinting it on ourselves by consuming it, and then say, okay, I now have this particular thing. Now I maybe can't breathe underwater just yet, but I have the understanding of how it would be done, and if necessity, I could hold my breath longer than I would need to survive. That's what I'm talking about. The mermaid stuff of breathing underwater, growing the tail, well, that will take a bit more thought, but get back to me in 6 months on that one. See what I can
Well,
find.
you're on your way. I mean, you might be
I'm
running
definitely
into
on my
some
way.
mermaids.
No,
Maybe
and
you'll do it. Maybe
this is
those
what I
are two
need.
mermaids in those
No,
canoes.
well, this is it. Yeah, well, this is maybe what's required at this point is like people to bring me different stuff and say, okay, well, look, let's take this, let's try this, let's see what happens when we omnify this, and then yeah, building the resonance field, building the list of what's available. Say, okay, well, I'm going to the video store today. What video do I want to take out? Well, this is like doing the same sort of thing. It's like, well, what mood do I want to imbibe today? Do I want to take into myself? Do I want to become in this moment? Because I need to go out into this. I mean, potentially, if you go skydiving, maybe you want to consume a bird before you do that. Omnify a bird and consume that so you get the most out of the experience. So that when you jump out of the plane, you're already in the bird state and you can fully enjoy the experience. The sky's the limit on this. They really, I mean, each time I think about it, new possibilities arise. But it's literally to take the creatures, the substances, the beasts, the plants, the minerals, the frequencies, whatever of the earth, and actually turn them into consumable things, which we can then embody. I mean, it is shapeshifter technology, yeah. And where it goes, where can't it go? I mean, where it's just in its infancy now, but it's growing fast. I mean, each time I talk about it, its scope grows, and that's why I'm looking at like building a whole company around this because it's going to get bigger and bigger. I mean, if I can figure out how to regrow hair, well, then we have a big party. I'm paying.
Right. So, I mean, I think that part of for me anyway, part of the technology is also the um, conversations around it that help people to understand,
Mm, mm,
the tech or the technology or whatever that is being shared, because it's in a way we're going in the direction of what you're talking about is frequency fields, coded fields, and it's
mm, mm.
different coded fields of experience organized in this substance and that substance. So everything will carry their own coded frequency field of information. And if
Absolutely.
we are freeing up our old frequency signatures or whatever, our own obsessions with one code or one field or one image of self or whatever is that narcissistic piece that we spoke about. If we're saying, okay, enough, like we've enough of that, like we get the code of self. Like what
Mm,
else
mm,
is there?
mm,
What
mm,
else
mm, mm,
can self dissolve into to make this
mm.
greater infinite experience of selves,
Sure,
right?
sure,
Which is what you're talking about. And
sure.
what I wanted to say here is Rupert Sheldrake is one of the biggest people in terms of the morphogenetic field work, because
Yes.
he studied coded fields of information that are kind of like an archetypal energy signature around things.
Mm,
So he said a plant, a seed, it knows what to grow into because
mm.
there's a morphogenetic field, a coded field around it.
Yes, yes,
Same as
yes,
the
yes,
human archetype and this and that. And
yes.
what's interesting, just in terms of what you're talking about, is that it's like we're saying, okay, break. I mean, this is the Chod thing. Break the obsession with self in this format,
Mm.
and go to experience
All
all
forms.
fields and
Yes,
all
yes.
forms and all codes and all kind of
Mm.
frequencies. And I think um, what's interesting for me is that the morphogenetic field principle is tied to memory.
Mm.
So you can actually, so what the way that Rupert Sheldrake speaks about it is that the past carries a coded memory. Okay, so in
Mm.
a
Mm.
family
Mm.
constellation, for example, you tap into the
Mm.
memory bank of the family and you start
Mm.
to shift that. But I think what's exciting is this idea that the future is all potentials, right?
Mm.
The
Mm.
past is kind of like we don't have to worry about that because we've had that experience. But the future is like, okay, infinite codes,
Mm.
infinite potential ways to organize our reality. I mean,
Mm.
there is no end to the way that the void can express
Totally.
itself.
Totally. Yeah.
And we can become, it's like gourmet chefs of
Totally.
you know
Oh,
of the feast of the existence.
exactly. Yeah.
And there's also science around this idea of the fact that we can create a frequency signature imprint in the future, our own. It's our own coded field.
Yes.
So like a future-based fingerprint
Yes.
through what we concentrate on. So
Yes. Yes. Yes.
actually, this, let's say, like the river of consciousness coming towards us, or whatever we put up the river to be experienced, and imbibed, or whatever you want to call
Mm.
it, becomes that, like you say, gets coded into the body.
Mm. 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 Mm.
And um, I know that the Buddhists don't speak about the concept of soul, really, do they?
Not so much.
No, because they're saying, okay, we want the soul is
But they do talk about reincarnation. So yeah, that's essentially kind of presupposes that. Yeah.
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 Well, I mean, the soul, I think, is just, it's the memory, it's the coded memory of self,
Sure.
so that you can
Exactly.
go
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a separate self,
Yes.
from one life to the other, and still remember who you were. But there's
Yes.
a point at which you don't, you may not want to be a separate self anymore.
Sure.
And
Sure.
then you start dismantling the soul. I think that's where the Buddhists are coming from. You don't need
Yes.
to have a separate self anymore. You just want to be drawing directly from source.
Yeah, or just to have the choice of not, or having the choice of where you actually want to reincarnate, like what, to be free of all the passions, to have moved beyond them, and to say, I can no longer be bound by this whole movie. I see the whole movie. I can either come back to serve humanity, or I can sit in the clouds and be served grapes and ambrosia and whatever it is I choose. But I've broken free. I now have like VIP pass on reality. I can go and do whatever I need or want to do. But I'm no longer bound by any of it. That's the Buddha's message. Like, get off the wheel of incarnation. Don't be bound by anger or jealousy or greed or any of that stuff, because that'll all bind you here. But once you free yourself from that, well, then, multipass. Yeah, whatever you want, wherever you want. It doesn't matter. I mean,
Multipass
it's
to
up
the
to you.
void,
To the void, to the universe, and everywhere. Yeah, in the world,
the
to anything.
multiverse.
Yeah. Just multipass.
Yeah.
General multipass.
So that's
Stamped
the,
by
in a way, it's
reality.
like I
Chink.
see your work, like this Omni technology, like this, like it's like a chod um, festival, or not a festival, but like a child practice. It's like, actually, this is what you're offering. You're offering, um, it's like an offering of deconstructing the old form, right?
Well,
In a
it's
way.
almost like the Omnitech is more like a reconstruction. The chod is almost like the deconstruction to like arrive at the blank slate pure potential. And the Omnitech is actually saying, well, okay, well, I want this frequency as part of my new thing. I've broken it all down, but I'm going to include this frequency in my field so that I can then operate with this frequency. For example, say the ginseng bringing you like a sixth gear on your car, but for yourself, so everything just moves more smoothly. But if that becomes installed, it means your car's automatically got a sixth gear. So it's like you're driving too far in fifth and you want to put in sixth lower revs, it just works more smoothly. It's just one example of it. It's just one thing you would probably want to have generally, or like the reishi, which if things are running too hot, it'll cool it down. If things are running too cool, it'll heat it up. It'll to have an auto regulator. So it's like to ensure that whatever's happening in the body, it'll just there's some force in it which is kind of looking after it maintaining at the midpoint where it runs optimally. To have something like that, I don't think anyone would say no to that, which is why, for example, the reishi mushroom is so highly prized because that's what it does. But to when you consume the Omni of it, you're instilling this in your body. It's like, okay, well now I'm going to put a device in my body which is going to ensure that I will always be running at optimal functionality, that the engine doesn't overheat or get too cold. I mean, in India, buses, the radiator freezes and they have to light fires under the buses to heat up the radiator because, but if you had something in there already, it would make sure that it would never sink too low so that the radiator is always never too hot, never too cool, but it's always cooling the engine. Who would say no to that? Not me.
Okay, that's interesting. So, like an
Yeah,
antifreeze.
antifreeze, yeah, but also it's an anti-overboil as well to stop it boiling as well. On the other side, so getting too hot. So whatever it takes, whatever needs to be brought in, just a modifying force to keep everything at optimal functionality. And whatever you're doing, you always want to be at optimal functionality. And to put in a the beauty of the plants is like they're living intelligences. So you're bringing in another living intelligence, which is going to actually help you run your movie. So it's like an ally in a sense, but it's a plant ally which will then become engrafted to you, which will actually, there. For example, Panax ginseng, Korean ginseng, was actually so valued at one point that if you were caught stealing ginseng in the king's reserve, the punishment was death, instant execution. You were killed on the spot. That's how much it was prized. That's how much people prized it. They would sneak into, on pain of death, they would sneak into the king's ginseng reserves, which probably included thousands of miles of land, and steal the ginseng. But they knew if they were going to get caught, they'd be killed. This is how highly that substance was prized. So to have that as part of it, part of your thing, definitely, yeah.
So I
So
mean,
that's
eventually, like we'll be coming to visit you in Cape Town. We might find you in any form. We can't be sure
I
that we'll
did.
find you
I mean, this form, I kind of like this form. It served me pretty well. I'm okay at
black
regrowing some
jaguar.
hair.
It could be anything. It'll be like
Anything. You know where I live, so yeah, you can always hunt me down there in my lair. I've got a 2-year-old, so yeah, not going too
you have
far.
to keep visiting the same form.
Well,
What?
you want to mix it up a bit just to keep it fresh.
Yeah. So what are your latest forms? Obsessive forms.
Well, like I said, I've been dieting the Salvia Omni, which
Yeah.
has given me that has been partly about breaking the form, reclaiming energy from the past, interactions where a split might have occurred due to a strong emotional charge, whether it was based on loss or sadness or betrayal or anger or disempowerment, just reclaiming the energy from that.
How
And
is that different to the Iboga work?
it's hard to say. Iboga repairs the family lineages, right? So problems there. This, the this is more like reclaiming the energy of when you said something silly in class or your voice broke in public and you were surrounded by girls and they laughed at you and your face went red or that kind of thing, reclaiming the energy of the shame associated with that or you had a bit of snot on your nose in public and everyone laughed at you because that the humiliation you felt because that these are just random examples, but it was like the emotion associated with that. This is kind of going back and dealing with some of those things, yeah. But it's also deeper duality breaking. It's a very hard one
That's interesting.
to
So shame-based, playing
that
on
just as an
shame-based stuff.
example, well, that was just an example, but or anger based, or where you made the wrong decisions. Almost like going back to that juncture in the road where you made a certain choice based on an emotion and you pursued a certain course of action, but actually saying, well, I'm going to return to that juncture, I'm going to retaste that emotional stuff, and I'm actually going to choose not to play into that pathway. Obviously, the path I still chose is got me here, but I'm not here because of that choice. I'm here because I'm here. That choice I made, but I'm not bound by the emotional state of it. I could have equally have chosen another path, and that would have meant I would still be here, but I would be here in a different space. And the state I'm in here now might be a more healthy space because I'm not bound by the neurotic aspect of that. So I mean, to even claim I understand the salvia stuff would be way too bold. I have an inkling of what it can do, and I've seen what it's done, and it's subtle yet powerful. I mean, a lot of the salvia visions are often so bizarre that people can't make head or tail of them. But consuming it with the Omni has allowed me to see the results in reality. And what it's done for me personally has meant I'm far more engaged with reality. It's called the diviner sage, and it's often used for precognitive things, for knowing the future, or to do a reading or a tarot reading. These are the uses it's traditionally used for. But the way I've been using it is like, okay, who do I need to be part of my reality today in order to do this outcome? And then those people just appear out of nowhere, and like, or suddenly they appear in my place, and it's like, oh, I see
It's
this
beautiful,
person has
seamless.
appeared. The synchronicity type thing. It's like, oh, I asked for this, and here they are, and now I feel the connection with this person, so I must pursue this outcome with this person because this is what I asked for, or not. I don't have to, but it's giving me the option, but it's presenting them very strongly in my face to say, okay, this is what you want, so
It's
this is what
interesting.
you got.
It's like the idea of accessing, the higher frequencies and higher consciousness that comes with a higher frequency. So you're in. It's almost like
Mm,
you're completely outside of a dualistic
mm.
experience of the world, and you're in a unified
Yes.
state. You're in a higher frequency
Well, this is
consciousness.
really what it does is it breaks some of the dualities. I mean, they say it's quite a ruthless. The way I almost see Sylvia, and people might argue with me, but here, but it's like it's very much the crone. She's seen it all, she's done it all, she's had her kid, she's whatever, and you're coming to her with some sort of nonsense, and she was like, actually, no, don't be silly, this is what you need to do. And it's like, okay, all right, I'll just do that, because she's seen the future of where you're going with this thought if you go the wrong way. So it's like stepping above time, looking down on it, and actually just informing you, like, this is what you need to do. Actually, step, 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 don't be an idiot. And it's
Like
like,
the Zen master, he'll
man,
like
exactly, yes. But
pluck
Del
you
Penton
before you've
says
even
Salvia's
known that you've had the thought.
exactly, yeah.
It's
But
going
it's
in the
saying
wrong
like,
direction.
this is what you need to do. Don't be stupid. I've seen where it goes. Trust me, or not, or you can choose to continue on doing that if you want to. But you can't then say that you didn't know because this is what's going to happen, right? But often it's like presenting or just showing you the reflections. Like, okay, well, this is what will happen if you keep pursuing this course of action. This is what will happen. Like, do you want this? No. Okay, well then pursue a different course of action. But just presenting that to you. And if you're
Amazing.
still hard-headed enough, it's like saying to Narcissus at that point, like, if you continue to look at yourself in the mirror all the time, you will be turned into a flower. Do you want to be turned into the flower? Narcissus, oh no, I don't. Okay, well, actually, I'll go out and be less self-absorbed because this is where this path will lead me, right? As opposed to like also the person who's too self-sacrificing. If you continue to be totally self-sacrificing, the path it'll lead you to will be you'll be old and resentful and like, oh, I've served everyone, what did they do for me? That's where you potentially go. So now somewhere between the two, you learn to self-nourish, or from Narcissus's perspective, you learn to like actually go out and help people a bit, stop being so self-absorbed. This is the lesson for me that Salvia brings, and it's quite a sharp bang. Well, this is what it is. Consuming it in the Omni has been very interesting because it's been much more gentle. I've been reading this book on salvia by Ross Heaven at the same time that I've been reading it, and like a lot of what he talks about there are people. I mean, for example, he had one vision of himself as a bedspread, right? And he was the bedspread, and he felt someone picking him up and throwing him on the bed. And his reflection at that point is like he didn't like the pattern on the bedspread, but that pattern represented him, so he didn't like the pattern of himself. So the message there was like, not that you're a bedspread, but if you don't like the pattern, you can change it,
Or
weave
a
a new
doormat.
pattern. Or a doormat. His other thing was he was a piece of chewing gum underneath a pram. And as he went round, he was a chewing gum, he'd be squashed into the earth. So his lesson there was be malleable, but don't be too malleable. Also hold your form, right? So, but in the moment, being able to realize what needs to be seen from that, it took him months to realize this whole thing. And in that time, his relationship ended, or his wife left him because he hadn't realized these things, because it was such a strange format of revelation. Now, with the consuming of the Omni of the Salvia that I've been doing, it's been a lot more gentle. I've been able to see it. Yes, there have been some outbursts of emotions which needed to come out, and this whole, narcissist attack thing was that came out of the salvia, and it was like the wrathful aspect in me is like, yes, that's a part of your nature. Yes, you are a wrathful deity. You do occasionally need to like stand up and draw the line in the sand. And sometimes you can't stop it, and that's fine too. To realize, yes, I'm willing to take the consequences of potentially losing a friend. And I thought I was quite gentle with it, but that stuff needs to be done, especially if you feel it very strongly. To trust in yourself. This is what I need to do at this juncture. I mean, I've always been a big fan of like the crazy wisdom of like absolutely have to do this at this juncture, and it's always served me in good stead. And also, but one of my things in the past was not engaging anger, and this was like, okay, I will engage the anger of it. I will run with it completely. I'll be as gentle as possible, but it needs to come out. And it was not only for him; it was for people in general, and saying like, okay, this whole thread of narcissism, well, this is where it's going to lead you. You eventually end up being reborn as a flower looking at yourself, this beautiful flower. You can just look at yourself. That's where it leads. And like you said, you've experienced the extreme of like the self-sacrifice on the other side, but it's somewhere in the middle path. It's somewhere in between. Take the lessons of both. Love yourself, absolutely. Realize we're here also to love each other and benefit mankind, but somewhere in the middle is the middle path, and that's beautifully adorned one goes out into the world benefiting beings because it's one's pleasure to do so, and like having a fabulous time at the same time because that's part of one's pleasure and that's part of one's learning and teaching for other people. This is what the ABC for me is about, the all victorious day. It's like, yes, I'm feeling fabulous, and because I'm feeling fabulous, I'm going to go out and have a fabulous time, and I'm going to bring all my friends along because I want them with me to share the fabulous time I'm having because they're part of me having a fabulous time, and in that state of having a fabulous time, we will liberate the planet.
Oh, all right.
Okay, if you
Do we
absolutely
have to?
insist. If we absolutely insist. I do, I'm afraid I insist.
Wow, what an amazing conversation. It is kind of endless, isn't it?
No, it is endless. So it's like a tapestry. One just weaves new color into it, and like new shades, and a new flower gets woven in here, or a new, serpent gets woven there. I mean, it's just for the dense array, the brocade of reality, the
And
weave of
it's
it.
exciting because it brings all these dialogues and all these ideas and like I said to you, I mean the dialogue of immersion and self and archetype and not self, form versus formlessness and being breaking the attachments between those things, and yet at the same time you're also talking about when you say like maybe for you a completion in a way was being able to get angry or enter the wrathful deity with full immersion, that for you would have been a death, I mean, an ending of a kind of personality obsession as
Sure,
well.
sure.
It's like
Well,
it definitely goes both ways. Nothing that
mm,
is done outside of us doesn't happen inside of
sure,
us.
sure.
So,
And ironically, the more one is willing to go there, the less one actually needs to go there because it's not like you're blocking any natural state. That's what Dzogchen says as a teaching. It's like all the states are pure in themselves. Anger, jealousy, these are all pure states. It's like once you see them as just pure expressions of your natural color, there is no error. Yeah, and they come out and they do what they need to do, and then they disappear. I mean, the whole thing around anger is anger turns to clarity. Yeah, that was the clarity of what needed to be done at that moment, but I intuitively trusted that's what needed to be done. It was so strong I couldn't stop it, but I almost gave myself permission. And the Soviet had almost like unlocked the gates of like, okay, out. And it was flawless. I see no error in it. I mean, maybe it could have been done better, maybe not, or I still think it's perfect. I mean, always we can try and make it interface with reality more seamless, more beautiful, more elegant. That's what I always strive for. I mean, the
yeah,
less jagged edges, the better.
I mean, the thing is that, if you're deciding about your behavior from the perspective of your personality, let's say, or your ego, or whatever, um, you know, it's it's already going to want to have an opinion, and then
Mm,
um, that's not formlessness in a sense. So
mm,
it's like
mm,
just
mm,
have the action, do the action,
mm,
let it be,
mm, mm.
and don't have an opinion actually.
Sure, sure,
Because then opinions start to spin in
totally.
either direction and polarize things again. It just
Mm,
happened.
Yes,
And
yes.
now what's going to happen next?
Yes. Well, just trusting it as the play of the natural state, which is perfect, as it expressing its own colors. And anger is one of the things. And I've seen often when people suppress anger, it comes out in various distorted forms, whether it's cancer or
Mm.
diabetes or whatever, it comes out in disease, or then they have hectic outbursts of anger where they go into a rage where they almost blank out and they destroy everything in the room and they come back and like, what happened? They blank out at that point. Whereas if at the time they'd gone, allowed the road rage to come out and just swore about it, the guy who cut them off in the street, maybe they wouldn't have gone into this crazy state and trashed their house because they went into this rage. Correct expression at that time of the emotion is a healthy thing. They say the suppression of any of the emotions or any of the natural urges or discharges causes disease. And this is a classic example of that. It's like allowing everything in its own place to find its own expression, but also to be creative in the expression, not to be limited by like, are you angry now or you're sad now? It's like to be sad can be a beautiful thing, to abide in the sadness. I listen to some Leonard Cohen and one cries because it's so sad, just going into the depth of sadness of Leonard Cohen.
Totally.
Yeah, I haven't done that in a while. I was at university when I did that last. But I mean that, and then coming out and feeling almost reborn as a result of it. Yeah, no error in in any state. This is what we're after. So to allow ourselves the fullest expression of the emotions at any moment. Yeah. And also
Yeah,
to realize
wow.
there's nothing to be afraid of, nothing to need to hide, nothing to put under the covers. It's like, yeah, that's all. And the more you do that, the less you need to go into these extremes of behaving. You don't have to cry for 3 hours. If you like, you have to cry for like 2 minutes properly, and then it's done, and then you can move on. But it's not like, oh, I should cry more, or even that fixation. But if you need to cry for 10 hours, cry for 10 hours. It's like not
No,
putting any
that's true. It
limitations
ties
on it.
ties into the completion of something. Like we can have an experience faster and get through it quicker. Then we don't have to obsess on it.
Exactly. We want to move beyond obsession and into just enjoyment. Yeah.
Well, I think we should wrap it up.
Cool.
An absolute amazing
Yeah, must be
technology to be
fun.
working with.
And like I said, if anyone wants an Omni made or wants to have an Omni, just get hold of me at Adam@mbuddhas, MBUDDHAS.com. Yeah? And we'll talk. Yeah? Until the
All
site's up.
right,
Yeah.
great. So
Cool. Thanks,
we'll see
Amanda.
you again.
All
Bye.
right.
Bye.